Our next guest, another interview will be is Andy Haldane, of course, former chief economist of the Bank of England, and currently the CEO of the Royal Society of Arts, and also was a permanent secretary for the Levelling Up at the Cabinet Office, which of course we heard a bit about earlier, and still chairs the Levelling Up Advisory Council. So please join me in welcoming Andy Haldane. So, Andy, just to kick things off, a topic we've touched on a couple of times with a few people about whether longevity is a good thing or a bad thing for the economy long term. And you were talking a bit about this in a speech last week. So if you could kick off on that, would be great.
I will, thank you. Morning, everyone. Nice to see you all. I'm also multitasking. Economics, dead easy economics. If you want to grow an economy sustainably, there's two ways of doing it. Roughly speaking, you can either grow the workforce, more people, or you can make those workers more productive. That's basically it. That's all you need to know about economics, basically. And the thing is, although health and the economy aren't as often as they should, fused together, when we think about the economy. If you look back at how it is, we were able to start growing in the middle of the 18th century. The channels for that were the two I mentioned, more people being more productive, and a key driver of both of those two cylinders of growth were improvements in health. So the rough doubling of life expectancies in the 20th century was, of course, a huge addition to the supply of workers and therefore to growth. And the huge improvements in medical advances over the course of several centuries was a huge boon to how productive those workers were in work. We know that both physical and in particular mental health are a huge drag, unsurprisingly, on people's productivity in the workplace. So absolutely, these two, the health and the economic, have an umbilical symbiotic relationship, always have, Wilf, but I'd say that relationship in the light of certainly COVID and even prior to that has become even more important than hitherto.
So touch on the participation rate or people's willingness to work, because clearly, particularly with COVID, we saw unemployment stay low, which is an odd definition. Employment fell, but because less people are sort of offering themselves up to work.
That's right. So even before COVID struck, we'd seen for 10, 15 years rising levels of reported long-term sickness in the workplace. And for some, that was driving people out of the workplace. For others, it was just making them less productive in the workplace. But that was all emasculated. That was all being disguised, if you like, by another big secular trend, which was increased levels of participation by those over the age of 50, particularly women, which was a tremendous thing. In fact, the single cylinder of UK growth since the global financial crisis was that increased participation in the workforce, in particular by women, right up until COVID struck, at which point we saw participation among the over 50 cohort go into reverse, as we did see among other cohorts as well, Wilf. And that meant that single cylinder of UK growth had gone into reverse, partly for health reasons, partly for lifestyle reasons. And that's why, in a sense, health and other things have never mattered more to our economic prospects than at any time, I'd say, in the last 200 years.
Just quickly on the short term on that cyclical factor, I mean, is it sustainable for people to continue not to work? I mean, why has that trend not reversed yet? Surely people would run out of money and they'd have to come back to work at some point. Or is this just wealthy people that have left the workforce?
Well, some of it is that. I mean, truth be told, we do not know the answer to your question. We don't have a ready-made answer to why is it precisely we've seen getting on for 750,000 people leave the workforce over the past couple of years. Surveys are revealing about that. They tend to reveal that ill health, has been a significant, probably the most significant cause of that. For me, that's not just, though, a COVID thing. What we saw is this long-term secular build-up in reported ill health well ahead of COVID that I think then was when flipped over the edge by the effects of COVID, to the point where today we have, I think, remarkably, 1 in 6 people in the working age population reporting themselves as suffering from long-term ill health of various types. Among even the healthiest cohort, the 16 to 24-year-olds, we have 1 in 8 reporting long-term ill health, particularly of a mental health nature. So those are the underlying trends made worse, I think, by COVID, Wilf. And the truth is, we're still in the foothills of really understanding the deep-rooted causes of those.
And then you mentioned the importance of health for productivity of a nation. Also, what can be done during people's lives or careers, if we're thinking of it that way, to continue to increase productivity or change the sort of sector they work in later in life, which I guess a lot of people don't really tend to do?
Yeah. So, as I'm sure everyone in this audience knows and would probably agree, I mean, we are a world away from having a system of interventions, institutions, infrastructures that can really make a reality of lifelong learning. It is the case right now that those most in need of skilling and reskilling are at present least likely to engage in those skilling and reskilling exercises. The scale of the interventions we need to make good on that challenge are at least a decimal point out of what they would need to be to make good on this challenge. It is great that we now have a lifetime learning guarantee. It's great that we now have a lifetime learning entitlement. Although bear in mind, that's an entitlement to borrow. It's an entitlement to debt, which is an interesting concept of entitlement. But in terms of scale, that for me is still a decimal point away of what will be needed over the life course. It's just not just about, by the way, people reskilling in similar sorts of stuff. This is as much, I think, about relearning what it is we learn and relearning how it is we learn. Unless that happens, we won't reach the learners most in need, which at present the system is not doing.
Relearning probably key to this topic, but the question's slightly different, which is the extent to which AI, robotics, that sort of thing can transform the productivity of a nation. And on one level, that's a good thing, of course. On another level, does it cause a lot of unemployment and weigh on a nation's economic power?
Yeah, I mean, historically, for the first 3 industrial revolutions, 18th, 19th, 20th centuries, technology was not a job killer. It was feared that it might be. In each case, it was not. I suspect as we enter the 21st century and the 4th industrial revolution, that will still be true. Although, as in previous industrial revolutions, it will reshape pretty fundamentally the nature of work and the nature of skills. I think when it comes to that lifelong learning thing we've been discussing, it could and should be transformative. For the whole of human history, we have been constrained by our physical resourcing in the way we go about teaching. So as a matter of resourcing, pure resourcing, it wasn't possible to make good on individual, personalized, contextualized learning journeys from cradle to grave. That was not feasible. Now it is. There's no reason now why we couldn't set up for individuals personalized and contextualized learner journeys at each point in their life cycle, AI and machine learning and the like, now makes that possible. And for me, that would be how 21st century education needs to lean very significantly to make good on these challenges.
One quick, very final question that's come up with Iona as well, but to what extent, and there's good things and bad things, of course, we're very much focused in the short term on the bad things of rising interest rates, but how important for long-term savings for your retirement and what it means to the economy is it that what we had of the last decade of fantastically low interest rates is not what we have for many decades from here?
Yeah, so this is my previous gig, by the way, the Bank of England. Yes, I mean, in normal times, you would expect to earn a real return on the investments that you make, whether it's in money or in other assets. So in that sense, we have lived through a fairly unusual period. Now the transition from where we have been to a new normal will be painful for lots of people who have borrowed off the back of that, and I hope that's managed elegantly, or as elegantly as it can be. But ultimately, some nudging up of the long-term global real rate of interest would be a sign of a healthy economy, because that hopefully would signal much more investment was taking place and soaking up the pool of excess savings that was driving down the long-term global rate of interest in the past.
Andy Haldane, thank you very much.
Well, thanks very much.